a murderer whose crime was celebrated, astronauts up to no good, and a dog that came between life and death. These three stories may seem strange, but is it possible that their foundations are rooted in truth? Tonight, let's test your abilities to decide between fact or fiction.
The line that divides the factual from the unreal has long since blurred. The tales we once thought fantastical, now implanted as truth. To decipher verity from the imagined, you must break from the ordinary and consider a universe where the outlandish prevails. Can you expand your mind to see beyond our perceived reality? Can you decide what's fact or fiction?
Usually when a murder happens in a small town, locals are united in their hate for the perpetrator. But in the case of Harold Clifford, he found himself being celebrated as a local hero.
Harold didn't mean to kill Maud Hartgrove, but that's exactly what he did in the winter of 2002. The small Midwest town of Bayfield, Wisconsin, was a complete stranger to crime until that fateful November day, and its tiny police department never had anything more to deal with other than minor disturbance calls. Maybe that's why locals acted so strangely when 26-year-old Harold took his neighbor's life and hid the heinous crime right under everyone's noses for a full 3 months. Maud wasn't a popular character in Bayfield. Well, that's putting it lightly. She was hated. She was known to be a complete battle axe who loved to get involved in other people's business. Many of those minor disturbances reported to the police involved her, and she'd often spark an argument with one of her long-suffering neighbors. One day, Harold had simply had enough. His frustration boiled over when Maud walked into his backyard one snowy day to complain that he hadn't thought to clear her driveway. With snow shovel in hand and without a second thought, he swung at his infuriating neighbor. The single strike to her skull was enough to kill her, and in a panic, Harold hid her body in his freezer. Either nobody noticed that Maud suddenly wasn't around, or they just didn't care, because nobody reported her missing for those entire 3 months. Eventually, the guilt got to Harold, and he went to the police to confess his violent crime. Everyone was shocked that the mild-mannered and well-liked young man had committed murder, and locals actually fought to have Harold released in turn for him having freed them from the old woman's torment. They failed, and Harold was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Maud Hartgrove. Many of his former neighbors still campaign to this day for his release, regarding him as a local hero.
Could an entire community support a murderer simply because the victim was annoying? Did sweet and gentle Harold really snap and lose his cool that winter evening? Let us know what you think in the comments section below, and be sure to vote by using the on-screen poll. Our next story is much more lighthearted and shows that even the world's top astronauts know how to have fun, even if they might be putting their colleagues' lives in danger.
The Gemini program was extremely important to America's space race, and it saw many firsts, including the first American spacewalk and the first sandwich in space. Yes, you heard me right, a corned beef sandwich that was smuggled into space by NASA wildman Ed White. Ed smuggled the sandwich inside his spacesuit for the entire launch and only revealed his snack once they were in orbit. He shared it with his co-pilot, and the two had a good laugh over the ridiculousness of eating a contraband sandwich in space. That is, until the sandwich began breaking up in the zero-gravity environment, and what was hilarious a second earlier quickly became dangerous. Astronaut food has a special coating which stops this kind of thing from happening. Crumbs can get behind electrical panels and cause serious issues with how the spaceship functions. So NASA was furious, to say the least. NASA wasn't the only irritated party, in fact. Congress was annoyed that the government was spending millions of dollars to develop space-friendly food, and astronauts were pulling crazy pranks with sandwiches instead. In a statement that NASA thought they'd never have to make, an administrator assured Congress by saying that they had taken steps to prevent the reoccurrence of corned beef sandwiches in future flights. Ed the Space Cowboy didn't only smuggle sandwiches into space, he also embarrassed the entire space program when he accidentally left his mic on while doing a moonwalk and told the world that he had gas. Oops.
This story sounds like something straight out of a comedy movie. Would professional astronauts really behave in such a dangerous way? Can you imagine NASA having to make an announcement to promise that no more corned beef sandwiches would end up in space? Let us know what you think in our on-screen poll while we prepare to tell you our final tale for the night. Dogs are known for their intelligence and also for their sense of loyalty. But did you know that they can sense when something's wrong? Danielle didn't either. That is, until her German Shepherd proved exactly how observant he can be.
45-year-old Danielle and her pet dog had been best friends from the moment they met at the dog shelter. She spotted Tommy immediately. The 10-week-old pup was adorable and playful, and Danielle knew she had to have him. 2 years later, Tommy had grown into a loyal, energetic, and gentle dog and was always by his owner's side. One Friday morning, Danielle was working in her Birmingham, Alabama home while snacking on an apple. Even today, Danielle can't be sure how it happened, but all of a sudden, she was choking on a rogue apple slice. She tried to stay calm, to cough it up, but soon Danielle realized with horror that she wasn't able to. She and Tommy lived alone, and there was nobody around to help her, so she did the only other thing she could think of and tried administering the Heimlich maneuver on herself. Tommy was growing agitated at this point, as if he could sense that something was seriously wrong with his owner. Danielle could feel herself growing faint from a lack of oxygen, and when Tommy leapt at her chest and knocked her to the ground, she didn't have enough energy left to fight him. And perhaps that was for the best, because Tommy had a plan. The German Shepherd began leaping on his owner's chest with impressive force, eventually dislodging the apple slice from Danielle's throat. Tommy then set about licking Danielle's face to keep her from passing out until she caught her breath and recovered from her terrifying near-death experience.
We all know that dogs are man's best friend. But are they really capable of reading a situation as well as Tommy did on that fateful day? Could it be that we've made up this harmonious tale of man and beast simply to warm your heart? Let us know what you think right now as we get ready for the moment we've all been waiting for, the reveal.
Are you ready to find out if you can decipher between fact or fiction? Let's look back at tonight's 3 stories and find out which were born from reality and which were fabrications of the imagination.
Let's first revisit Harold Clifford and his status as an unlikely hero after his murder of Maud Hargrove. Did he really lose his cool over some snow and kill his neighbor? No, he didn't. The story isn't true, and Harold and Maud never existed. This one came straight from our imaginations. Next, we're off to space to revisit the corned beef sandwich that caused so much trouble. Do you think an astronaut actually snuck a sandwich into orbit inside his spacesuit? Not only is this story true, it's totally something I'd do myself. The actual story was that of John Young. He wasn't fired, but he never tried anything like that again. Oh, and he really did announce to the world that he had the farts. Finally, we're back with Danielle and Tommy and the incredible canine rescue. Did a dog really manage to save the life of its owner in such a heroic way? We're happy to tell you that, yes, this absolutely did happen. Debbie Parkhurst saw her life flash before her eyes before Toby, the golden retriever, burst into action and brought her back to life.
How well did you do in tonight's video? Did you look past the deception of our world and define the off-blurred line that struggles to separate lies from the truth? Let us know in the comment section below. And should you find the urge to test your perceptions again, be sure to subscribe and join us next time when we ask you to decide what's fact or fiction.